everybody. I hope that you're well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 5 to 8 English lesson on personal pronouns. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, then we're going to select the subject of English language arts. We're doing grade 5 to 8, and then we're going to scroll down up until we get to our chapter of personal pronouns. All right. So our chapter is personal pronouns. Our subject is English language arts. We're focusing on grade 5 to 8. And the lessons that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of personal pronouns is to choose between subject and object pronouns, and also compound subjects and objects with I and me. All right. So when it comes to personal pronouns, then you can use a subject pronoun as the subject of a sentence or clause. And before I even continue, remember pronouns, it takes the place of a noun, right? So instead of saying the person's name or referring to people's names or people, we can, for example, just say her, she, him, they, them, and so on, right? And that takes the place of the person's name. So we can use a subject pronoun as the subject of a sentence or clause, and that tells us basically who is doing something. This is now the subject pronoun, right? It tells us who is doing something, and it's usually at the beginning of the sentence. So we can use a subject pronoun as the subject of a sentence or clause, and that basically tells us who is doing something. And like we say, it is usually at the beginning of a sentence. And the most common subject pronouns are words like I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. And if we look at an example, right, where we'll be able to identify our subject pronoun, and then it says, I hug Rick. So I is our subject pronoun that tells us what, that tells us who basically is doing something. All right. And you can basically use an object pronoun. So we can use an object pronoun after an action verb. So we say the subject pronoun, right? It is used as a subject or sentence of a clause, right? It tells us who or what is doing something. And we'll usually find a subject pronoun at the beginning of a sentence. And we say that our subject pronouns are words like I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. And those are words that we use at the beginning of the sentence, or usually at the beginning of a sentence. But now we have object pronouns. And an object pronoun, you will find basically, or you can use after an action verb. And when it comes to object pronouns, right, we say that an object pronoun we use after an action verb, and we can always use an object pronoun also after preposition. So so object pronouns, right? We can use it after an action verb, but object pronouns we can also use after a preposition within a sentence. And prepositions are words, for example, like at, for, of, on, to, or with. And examples of our object pronouns, right? And remember, these are words that comes after an action verb or after a preposition, are words like me, you, him, her, it, us, or them. Now it means that you are referring to someone, like to them. These are our object pronouns. And if we look at an example, right, of an object pronoun, then we can say Rick hugs me. So hugs is our action verb. So me is our object pronoun. And that comes after the action verb, which is hugs. Right? So once again, hugs is our action verb, and our object pronoun is me that comes after our action verb, which is hugs. If you look at another example, remember we said that an object pronoun can either come after an action verb or it comes after a preposition. It says Rick smiles at me. Rick smiles at me. And the next one says Rick smiles at me. And if we were to identify our object pronoun, then at is our preposition and me is our object pronoun. So at is a preposition and me is our object pronoun. And remember, we said an object pronoun, it comes either after an action verb or it comes after a preposition within a sentence. All right. So once again, we have our different pronouns. We have a subject pronoun and we have an object pronoun, right? And we say the subject pronoun, we can use a subject pronoun as a subject of a sentence or clause, right? And the subject pronoun, it tells us either who is doing something or it tells us basically just who is doing something, right? Or what is doing something. And our subject pronoun we'll usually find at the beginning of a sentence. And our subject pronouns we will usually find at the beginning of a sentence. And our most common subject pronouns are words like I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. Those are our most common subject pronouns. And then we said we have our object pronouns. And object pronouns you either find after an action verb or we'll find an object pronoun after a preposition within a sentence, right? And prepositions are words like at, for, of, on, to, or with. Those are prepositions. So, for example, if our object pronoun comes after one of those words, then that is basically how we can identify it after the preposition. And object pronouns are words like me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. All right, so now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and we're going to choose between either a subject or an object pronoun. All right, so now we're going to choose between either a subject pronoun or an object pronoun. All right, so we're going to our test where we're going to select a subject pronoun or an object pronoun. And remember, a subject pronoun we usually find at the beginning of a sentence, and an object pronoun we'll usually find either after a action verb or after a preposition. All right, so now we need to select either our subject pronoun or object pronoun. All right, so now it says, do we say him dyed his hair purple for Halloween, or do we say he dyed his hair purple for Halloween? Which one is correct? Do we say option one, him dyed his hair purple for Halloween, or option two, he dyed his hair purple for Halloween? All right, and if we were to select the correct option, we will say he, well done, dyed his hair purple for Halloween. So he is correct. Well done. All right, the next one says, do you think the judges will select her? Or do we say, do you think the judges will select she? Which one is correct? Her or she? So, do you think the judges will select her, option one, or she, option two? And if we were to choose the correct option, we'll choose, do you think the judges will select her? So option one is correct. Well done. Option one is correct. All right. The next one says, remember to tell your parents that you appreciate option one, they, or that you appreciate option two, them. Which one is correct? Remember to tell your parents that you appreciate they or that you appreciate them. Which one is correct? So they or them. All right. And if we were to choose the correct one, we will say, remember to tell your parents that you appreciate them. So option two is correct. Well done. Option two is correct because you appreciate them. All right. The mosquito buzzed around and then bit me, option one, or bit I, option two. The mosquito buzzed around and bit me, option one, or the mosquito buzzed around and bit I, option two. Which one is correct? And if we were to choose the correct option, we would say that the mosquito buzzed around and then bit me. That's an object pronoun. So well done. Option one, me, is correct, and that's an object pronoun. The next one says, do we say, we challenge you to a game of table tennis, option one, or option two, us challenge you to a game of table tennis? So is it option one, we challenge you to a game of table tennis, or is it option two, us challenge you to a game of table tennis? Which one is correct? And if we were to choose the correct option, we will say we, which is a subject pronoun, challenge you to a game of table tennis. We, which is our subject pronoun, challenge you to a game of table tennis. Well done. Option one is correct. The next one says, when Vera is upset, she always confides in him, or do we say she always confides in he? We need to say which one is correct. Him or he? Him as in subject pronoun, object pronoun, or he, which is subject pronoun. And if we were to choose our correct option, we would say, when Vera is upset, she always confides in him. So well done. Option one is correct. Him. Now we're going to choose our compound subjects or compound subjects and objects with I and me. So compound subjects and objects with I and me. All right. When it comes to our compound subject, right, or objects with I and me, I and me, it's the same as using I you usually use at the beginning of a sentence, mainly. Um, Whereas me, you'll maybe use after preposition or after an action verb, right? So now I, we say it is a subject pronoun, whereas me is an object pronoun. And when we say I is a subject pronoun, then it means that we can use I, which is our subject, I, as a subject of the sentence. And that usually, like we said, it comes at the beginning of a sentence. I basically tells us what the speaker is doing, or it tells us that the speaker is doing something. And like we say, it is usually at the beginning of a sentence. All right. And if we look at an example, all right, we will say, I hug Rick. I hug Rick. And once again, I is at the beginning of a sentence, and that is our subject pronoun. And when it comes to a subject pronoun, I, right? Like we said, I is a subject pronoun, and it usually comes at the beginning of a sentence, and it basically tells us that the speaker is doing something. And then we have our object pronoun. And we said me is an object pronoun. And me, the object pronoun, can be used after an action verb, or it can be used after a preposition within a sentence. And we made an example of Rick hugs me. Hugs is our action verb, me is our object pronoun. And then it says our object pronoun me, it comes after either an action verb or it comes after a preposition, right? And when an object pronoun, right, me, or let's say basically when a pronoun is connected to a noun with the word, for example, like Rick and I, or for example, like Rick and me, then it can be very hard for us to tell which pronoun is correct. We won't be able to know, or let's say not we won't be able to know. It will be a bit difficult for you to identify, okay, which is a subject pronoun or which is an object pronoun. But in order for you to tell which one is correct, you need to look at the sentence without the other noun. And if we look at an example, right, it says Rick and I like the teacher. So remember, we said that look at it without the noun. And remember, the pronoun takes the place of a noun. So if we were to look at it without the other noun, then look at it without Rick. So we will then say, I like the teacher. So I is then our subject pronoun. The teacher likes Rick and me. So if we remove Rick, then we would say that the teacher likes me. So which means that that comes after an action verb, and that becomes then our object pronoun, right? All right, it's basically almost time to leave. Let's just quickly do two more questions in our test, and then we are done for the night. All right, we just need to choose the correct pronoun to complete the sentence. It says, Mr. Thornton hired my cousin and me. Or do we say Mr. Thornton hired my cousin and I. Which one is correct? And if we were to choose the correct option, just one more question and then we are done. Right? Just one question. So remember, if we can then also remove the nouns, and then we'll be able to know if it is either a subject or an object pronoun. All right. If we were to remove that noun, then then it sounds almost like they hired me, which is an object pronoun, and it comes after an action verb. All right, one more. Do we say Rena and I blend the milkshake, or Rena and me blend the milkshake? The last one. Rena and I, or Rena and me. If you remove Rena, do we then use the subject pronoun I or the object pronoun me as at the beginning of a sentence? And if we were to choose the correct option, then we will say I blend the milkshake. Rena and I blend the milkshake. Well done. Option one is correct. All right, so this is the end of our lesson on personal pronouns. We said we have subject pronouns as well as object pronouns. And remember, pronouns takes the place of the noun. A subject pronoun you'll usually find at the beginning of a sentence, and it tells us what the noun, what the person or thing is doing. And then we have object pronouns, which you'll usually find after an action verb, or you'll use it after a preposition, right? All right, so this is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining. I really hope that you're going to have a good weekend further. So, till next time, goodbye.